And you guys can go ahead and be seated now. Thank you. Yeah, Pastor Dave is preaching live in our Roseville campus this morning. So I get the privilege of bringing you the word today. If you don't know me, my name is Rich. My wife Hillary and I are the directors of TFH Leadership College, and we love it. There's some of the students right there, graduates, should I say. Awesome. If you're between the ages of 18 and 35 and you want to see God do something great in your life, give him 9 months. You will not regret what he does in and through your life, okay? There you go. There's my pitch. I have the microphone, so I had to make the pitch. We're in the middle of a series called Jesus People, and last weekend, Pastor Dave kicked off the series with an amazing, amazing message. If you guys were in the room, wow, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but if you didn't hear it, you should check it out. It was one of the best things I've ever heard. So he preached last weekend, and this message is about the life and ministry of Jesus and taking a look at his interactions with people, the lives that he changed, and drawing principles from those stories to apply to ourselves as modern day Jesus people, okay? I believe that as Jesus people, here is our assignment out of 1 John chapter 2, says this: "This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did." Would you guys repeat that bold part with me? Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. Jesus is the example that every believer should seek to follow. And Jesus lived his life in a very particular way, and he makes some statements about how he lived his life and why he lived it the way that he did. Especially if you read in the book of John, you see some very specific statements that he makes. Let me give you a couple of examples of these. John 12:49, Jesus said, "I don't speak on my own authority. The Father who sent me has commanded me what to say and how to say it." John 14, Jesus says, "I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me." Now, Jesus did everything under the covering of the submission of the will of God. He never moved outside of it. I think it's important for us to remember that Jesus was completely man, but also completely God. And the way that works out, it's kind of tough for our minds to wrap themselves around, but he was completely man, so in his humanity, he had human limitations like you and I. He got hungry, so he had to eat food. He got tired, so he had to sleep. And yet, at the same time, he's completely God. So he has this human nature, but he has a divine nature. And something that I find incredible about Jesus, there's many incredible things, but while he had complete access to his divine nature, his godness, I mean, you think about it, God can do anything, right? So Jesus, being God on earth, he could have done anything at any time, but he refrained from fully utilizing all of that. He was never limited in it, but he exercised restraint in his God nature. Let me give you an example of that from Scripture. In Matthew 26, towards the end of Jesus' ministry, all of these religious leaders come to arrest him. And his disciple Peter whips out a sword, cuts a guy's ear off. Jesus says, "Peter, put your sword away." Turns to the guy with the ear cut off. He goes, "Sorry about that." Picks up the ear. "Here you go. Good as new. There you go." And he heals his ear. And then after he does that, he turns to Peter and he makes this incredible statement. He says, "Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" So he had full access to his divine nature, and yet he chose to exercise restraint. Why did he do that? So that in his human nature, he could give us an example of what it means to submit to and rely on the will of God. Jesus got all of his assignments from God. He got his direction from God. He got every word that he was ever meant to say from God. And Jesus, in his humanity, was able to receive these things from God because of a particular discipline or habit in his life that he instilled in his life. And we see a little glimpse of this in Luke 5:16. It says, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Now, you can find multiple verses like this throughout the Gospels. You can see that Jesus often went away and he prayed by himself. And it was his frequent and uncompromised decision to continually go into times of prayer with God that became his primary connection with God. In his humanity, that is. Obviously, he was God. And Jesus' connection to God through prayer had a great impact on the people that he came in contact with. The Bible tells us a lot about many stories of life change that happened as a result of Jesus' prayer life. A couple of examples of this. Last weekend, I said I wasn't going to spoil it, but Pastor Dave talked about a leper who was healed by Jesus. And if you go a couple verses back, you see that happened directly after a time of Jesus praying to the Father. After praying, Jesus healed a man who was paralyzed. After praying, he called out 12 of his disciples. He named them apostles, and they went on to be the fathers of the early church, except for one of them. We lost one, but they replaced him, so they figured it out. It was okay. After a night of praying by himself, Jesus, get this, he walks on a lake, walks on water, crosses to the other side, and there's a bunch of sick and injured and diseased people, and the Bible says that he healed them all. He just went and he just healed them all after a time of prayer. And then, of course, after a time of intense prayer, Jesus went to the cross on our behalf, and he radically changed history forever. And these are just the moments where the Bible explicitly goes out of its way to say Jesus prayed and then. But he had a lifestyle of prayer, and it significantly impacted the people that he came in contact with. And as Jesus' people, our prayer lives should do the same. Like Jesus, our prayer lives should be so powerful, so regular, so much a part of our lives that when we come into contact with other people, they are different because of it. Jesus taught on prayer a lot, and I think prayer definitely has the potential to have a deep and profound impact on our lives and on the people around us. But for how deep and profound prayer can be, I think we overcomplicate it a lot. And Jesus taught on prayer a lot, and his teaching was always deep and profound, but it was also very simple. And so today, what we're going to do as Jesus people is we're going to learn directly from the simple words of Jesus how to pray like Jesus and see how that's going to affect the people around us. We're going to talk about 3 keys to approaching God in prayer. My mouth is so dry right now, so give me just a second, please. Oh, thank you, God. That's so good. Okay, number 1, how are you guys doing this morning? Good. Number 1, prayer isn't about you and other people. It's about you and God. Okay? Prayer is about you and God. Jesus says this in Matthew 6:5. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. Now, Jesus is not against praying in public. Okay? We see in the Bible that most of his time in prayer was private prayer, but there were some recorded prayers of Jesus that he had in public. But the point that he is trying to get at is this: prayer is about you and God. He says, don't seek to be seen by other people, but instead pray to your Father who is in secret. Now, I have a good friend who just recently started on his faith journey with Jesus. Just a couple of months ago, he got saved, and he's learning what it means to follow Jesus. And it's been amazing to see this process because he didn't grow up in church, and he really doesn't know very much at all about the Bible or church life or Christianity or God. So he's in this amazing season of his life where he's learning all of this stuff for the first time. And he told me about the first time that he ever prayed. And it was amazing because it didn't take place in some crazy church event or conference. It didn't take place during a worship song where everyone's singing, Jireh, you are enough. He didn't pray during that. He didn't pray at the end of some guy preaching and saying, repeat this prayer after me. No, the first time he ever prayed was on a Monday morning in his car on his commute to work. And here's how it went. He told me about it, and it was something like this. He said, I was processing through it, and I was going, okay, Christians believe that God is everywhere all the time, and he can see and he can hear everything. So if God's everywhere all the time, then that means that he's here in my car with me right now. And if he's in my car, then that means I'm not alone in my car right now. So that means, hey there, how's it going? I don't really know what I'm doing here. And that's pretty much what his first prayer looked like. But you know what? I think God loved that. I think he loved that. And here's why. My friend was not trying to play church games. He was not trying to impress anybody. He was not trying to look good or godly or righteous or better than anyone else. He was simply trying to have a conversation with God. And at the heart of things, that is what prayer is all about. It's a conversation with God. Prayer has the power to build a deep personal relationship between us and God. And it's built primarily behind closed doors, just you and him having a conversation. And Jesus tells us that there is a reward for people who pray in this way. He continues on in Matthew 6:6, and he says, "But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you." There is a reward for those who pray in secret, and not for the sake of other people. Now, what is that reward? We don't get a specific answer in the Bible, but perhaps that reward is an answer to a problem that you've been trying to find the solution for and you can't figure it out on your own. Maybe that reward is you get peace in your spirit about a really difficult decision that you need to make, and God helps to give you the confidence and the peace that you need to make that decision. Maybe that reward is a favorable situation right around the corner from you that you never would have experienced outside of the power of prayer. Or maybe that reward is simply living and praying with the confidence of knowing that when I pray, God hears me. Like, when you really get that revelation, God hears me when I pray. That changes the way that you pray. That changes the way that you live. You live with confidence when you know that God hears you when you pray. And there's a reward for those times when you pray. My wife Hillary and I, we had the opportunity last year to meet an amazing man. His name is Craig Johnson. He's one of the associate pastors at Lakewood Church, which is a church in Texas. Huge church, thousands and thousands of people. And Pastor Craig is the one who started Champions Club. And Champions Club is an amazing ministry that specializes in ministering to families with special needs members. And it's such a massive operation that they have over 100 locations represented on all 7 continents in the world. And the Father's House is one of those locations, by the way. Thank you, Champions Club. We love you. You're amazing. And you would not believe the level of personal care and support that these people give to these families. We're talking thousands and thousands of families, and many of these families are in different nations, and they don't have the resources and the means that we do. And you've got these thousands of volunteers and team members who are being the love and the hands and feet of Jesus towards these families. And so the first time that we got to meet Pastor Craig, we got to meet him and his team. We went to a Tex-Mex restaurant in Texas, and the plates were like half the size of my body. I'm like, here we are. We're in Texas, Tex-Mex, here we go. And we're talking to Pastor Craig, and we say, Pastor Craig, what you've managed to accomplish, this is incredible. How did you get to the point where you were able to build this ministry that is a global outreach, and you're affecting so many people? And not only that, but you got it to the point where it's sustainable and it's continuing to grow, and you're adding locations. How did you manage that? And his answer to us was very, very simple. He said this: every day I come back to the feet of Jesus. Just as simple as that. He said, every day I come back to the feet of Jesus. He gives me the wisdom I need. He gives me the strategy and the ideas that I need. He helps me to have favor in situations and find the connections that I need. When things get stressful and overwhelming trying to run a global ministry, he gives me the peace and the strength that I need. Every single day I come back to the feet of Jesus. Now, Pastor Craig, he's a normal guy. He's kind of goofy. He loves God, loves his family, enjoys Tex-Mex. But he's a normal guy. And if God can do that through a normal guy who just committed to praying every day, what can he do through you? If every single day you commit to come before God and you sit at the feet of Jesus and you pray to him, it's amazing what God will do in you and through you if you give him the opportunity. And so we want to pray like Jesus. We want to go behind closed doors and build that relationship with God one-on-one. It doesn't take much. Just start a conversation with him. You may be sitting here and thinking, okay, but what if, like your buddy in the car, what if I run out of things to say? That's a very real question, and Jesus has a very practical answer for us. This leads us to point number 2. Prayer is about bringing your heart to God honestly without feeling the need to dress it up. Matthew 6, 7, and 8. Jesus says, "And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him." When it comes to prayer, words per minute is not the point. Maybe somebody needed to hear that. Words per minute is not the point. The length of the prayer is not the point. The right combination of words is not the point. We don't have to work hard to try to find the right phrasing to bring before God to try to impress him with the words that we have. No, he's our Father. Remember, prayer is a conversation that comes from a place of relationship. I have a daughter who is nonverbal. We utilize Champions Club. And because of her condition, again, she can't speak to us. She can't gesture to what she wants. She can't point to what she wants. She can't even look at what she wants. So communication with her can be a little challenging sometimes. But she does have little signals. She'll hum a certain way. She'll kind of slap her hand on her leg a certain way. She'll kick her leg. One of my favorite things she does is she lifts her eyebrows. I love when she does that. That means she's excited. She's got these little signals, and most people have no idea what to make of these signals. And that's understandable, and that's okay. But I am not most people. I'm her dad. And because I'm her dad, I know what she wants. I know her preferences. I know her likes. I know her dislikes. I know when she's feeling like herself and when she's not. She doesn't need to say anything to me. She doesn't have a perfect presentation. She's not the best communicator in the world. She doesn't have the right words to say, but she doesn't need to have those words because I'm her father and I know her. And guess what? Your father already knows what you need before you even say it. The reality is, man, sometimes we don't know what to pray. We don't know how to pray the right way. Sometimes life gets us to such a point where we feel so overwhelmed, so numb, so confused, so stressed out, so scared that we don't have the words. And sometimes all we can say is, God, I need you. God, I need you. Or just help. Man, I've prayed that prayer more times than I can count. Just a groan and then help. And God sees that. And he hears that. And he honors that prayer. God knows what you need. He knows when your heart's broken. He knows when you need peace. He knows when you need a little bit of joy in your life. He knows when you feel too tired or weary or exhausted and you just can't find the right words. He is your loving Father. He already knows what you need. So what I'm trying to say is resist the pressure to try to dress up your prayers and present something perfectly before God. You don't need to do that. He already knows what you need before you even pray it, okay? And that leads us to point number 3 here. Prayer is about approaching God as Father. Approaching God as Father. We are not praying to a detached and uninvolved God. We are not praying from a place of strict formality or relational distance. No, God is our Father. And I understand that when I use that word Father, that has a very different association for just about everybody in the room and everybody listening and watching. We've all had different experiences with our fathers. And maybe you have had an amazing dad who was generous and kind and loving, and he protected you, and he looked after you, and maybe not so much. Maybe your dad hurt you. Maybe your dad abandoned you. Maybe he disappointed you. Maybe he let you down. Maybe you never met your dad. Maybe he passed away before you had the chance to meet him. We all have different experiences with our earthly fathers. But it's very important that we don't confuse or mix up or associate our relationship with our earthly father over our relationship with our heavenly Father. Let me tell you something. Your heavenly Father will never abandon you. He'll never let you down. He'll never fail you. He's always kind. He's always generous. He's always compassionate. He always wants to protect you. He always wants what's good for you. Here's what the Bible says about the Father heart of God for us. Just a couple of verses. Psalm 103, the Lord is like a father to his children, tender and compassionate to those who fear him. Of course, that word fear doesn't mean to be terrified, but it means to worship and to honor him, okay? James 1:17, whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father. Just one more time. Can you guys just repeat that with me, that bold part? Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. This means that God's perspective of you, what he thinks about you, how he feels about you, how he wants to act towards you, all comes from a place of goodness in his heart towards you. And that will never, ever, ever change. It will never change. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter where you go, no matter if you sin, no matter if you mess up. Listen, guys, we mess up. We're fickle. We fail. The Bible says that when we are faithless, he remains faithful. He will never fail us. And no matter what we do, no matter where we go, his heart towards us will always be good and kind and gracious and merciful and compassionate and for us. And that will never change. The Father heart of God for us was never shown any clearer or any more powerfully than when Jesus walked the earth. Jesus is, of course, the Son of God, and he called God Father. But if you've noticed in the verses in Matthew that we've been reading, he refers to God when he's speaking to us as our Father. The Bible also tells us this in the book of Colossians, and I'll have the band join me on stage, please. Colossians 1:15. It says, Christ is the image of the invisible God. He existed before everything was created and is supreme over all creation. Jesus is the perfect, complete picture of the character and the nature of God. He is God. Jesus is God made flesh who walked among us that mankind could see with their own eyes and walk with and spend time with and talk to and touch and listen to. In short, although they are two different persons of the Trinity, which that's another thing that'll kind of blow your mind. They're two different persons of the Trinity, but at the same time, God the Father and Jesus the Son are one and the same. They are one and the same. And when you realize this, you start reading the life of Jesus and specifically his interactions with humanity through a whole new perspective, because you start realizing, oh, this isn't just like there's God and then there's Jesus over here and he's the nice one and God's the mean one. No, Jesus is the living embodiment of the heart of God towards us. And so when he interacts with humanity, it's not just Jesus interacting with humanity, it's God. It's the heart of God. One day, Jesus was walking down the street and there's this giant crowd around him because he's Jesus. He draws crowds. Bible actually tells us that this crowd nearly crushed him. Can you imagine? That would have been a very interesting day if they're like, Jesus, oh no. Sorry, that went dark. That went pretty dark, I'm sorry. It didn't happen, okay? He didn't get trampled. No, he's in a crowd. It's a massive crowd. And the Bible starts to give us some details about an individual in this crowd. And this individual had this amazing opportunity to come in contact with the combined power of the prayer life of Jesus and the Father heart of God. And we see this in Mark chapter 5. It says, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. Now, I want you to imagine this for a moment. Because of this woman's condition, she would have been considered ceremonially unclean. And what that means is she wouldn't have been able to worship at the temple, and anything and anyone that she came in contact with would have also become ceremonially unclean. So I would imagine that over the course of 12 years of her being ceremonially unclean, she developed a little bit of a reputation. People thought, well, if we get too close to her, then we're going to be ceremonially unclean too, and then we got to go through this whole process of cleansing ourselves, and so maybe we'll just keep our distance from her. Which means that for 12 years, this woman's been alone. She can't go to church. She's poor from spending everything she has trying to find a solution to this issue that's been plaguing her. Her body has gone through extensive trauma because of the medical practices that were supposed to make her better, but actually she ended up getting worse. And she's physically sick and weak from daily losing blood for 12 years. And on top of all of that, she is all alone. She has no pride left to cling to. She has no sense of dignity left. Everything has been taken from her. And as such, she doesn't have time for the opinions of other people. She's got no grand, eloquent words to make a case for why she's doing what she's doing. All she has is shame and brokenness and suffering and rejection, and underneath all of that, desperation for Jesus. So she fights her way through the crowd. Slowly but surely, she makes her way to Jesus. It's possible that she even crawled on hands and knees in order to get to the edge of his robe. And she finally does, and when she gets there, she touches his robe. It says immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" Now, just a quick side note here. Remember, Jesus had human limitations, and he refrained from fully utilizing his godness, right? His God power. So this healing power that went out from him, it wasn't just some mystical thing that he manifested in himself, in his humanity. That had to have come from somewhere, or rather from someone. Now, you can reference Pastor Dave's message from a couple weeks ago about living a spirit-led and a spirit-filled life. But I believe that the reason that Jesus had power to pour out in this situation is because he had first taken time to be filled up in a time of prayer. And this is something for us Christians to take into consideration. We will only ever be as powerful to pour out as the time that we have taken to be filled up. And if we want to walk in the power and the influence that Jesus walked in publicly, we must first go to his presence privately in a time of prayer. Personal prayer is important. It matters, and it affects the people around us. Now, back to the woman here. It says that then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. You just imagine the terror that this woman is feeling right now. Remember, she had a reputation. She was ceremonially unclean. She had been for 12 years. People knew, you're not supposed to be in this crowd. Crowds can get angry. Crowds can get violent. I can only imagine what she was thinking. Not only that she had potentially spread her uncleanness to thousands of people, but she wasn't supposed to be around a rabbi, certainly wasn't supposed to be touching him. She's probably scared for her life right now. She lifts her eyes up. And this man named Jesus, this man who embodies the Father heart of God, he turns to her and he addresses her. And when he addresses her, he uses a very significant term. And he says this, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." This woman is unclean. She's unqualified. To the people around her, she's undesirable. She doesn't deserve an audience with Jesus. She shouldn't be there in the first place. Her life is a mess. And Jesus, the embodiment of the heart of God, turns towards her and he calls her daughter. And let me tell you something. Just as Jesus turned to that woman, today, he is turning towards you. And when he does, there is no rejection in his eyes. There is no shame in his eyes. There is no judgment or weighty expectations. There is only tenderness and compassion and the heart of a father. I don't know the experiences that you've had with other people in your life. Other people may have let you down. Other people may have judged you. Other people may have put these expectations on you that were unrealistic. Other people may have disappointed you and abandoned you, but your Father will never do that. He calls you loved. He calls you blessed. He calls you accepted. He calls you chosen. He calls you fearfully and wonderfully made. He calls you daughter, son, child of the Most High God. And listen, you may be here and you may be feeling like that woman. You may be feeling like, I'm undesirable. I'm unqualified. I don't belong here. I shouldn't even be in a church service right now. You have no idea the things that I've done and the things that I've said and the things that I feel. Maybe you feel like you're at the very end of your rope. You've tried it all. You've tried the self-help. You've tried the programs. You've tried the drugs and the alcohol and the relationships, and they didn't help. In fact, you got worse off than when you started. But let me tell you something, there is a man named Jesus. And what doctors cannot do, Jesus can do. What drugs and alcohol cannot do, Jesus can do. What money cannot do, Jesus can do. What the strength and the wisdom and the resources of man cannot do, Jesus can do. He is still healing. He is still setting free. He is still redeeming. He is still restoring. He is still calling out sons and daughters from darkness and setting them in his light. He is still changing lives. He is still the heart of God towards us. He still loves you. He still chooses you. He still calls you. He loves you. He loves you. And what that means is you can run to him. You can bring your desperation. You can bring your sickness. You can bring your confusion and your heartache and your sorrow and your addiction and the things that you can't figure out for yourself. You can bring the broken, ugly mess of your life that you are too afraid and too ashamed to show other people. And when you bring it to him, there is no judgment or rejection in his eyes, only grace and love and the heart of a father to his child. So when you come to him in prayer, come boldly, come confidently. Come to your Father and know that he already knows what you need before you ever say a word. I want to do something before we hand off to our other locations today. I really believe that God wants some people in the room to really experience his heart for you. And so what I'd like to do is here and at our other locations, if you just close your eyes and bow your heads. I'm not going to say a prayer over you just yet, but I just want to read some declarations over you about how God feels about you. You are completely seen, completely heard, completely known, nothing hidden, and even still, you are loved and accepted. Your mistakes and your failures don't define you. Your Father does. You are worthy of love because he calls you worthy. You're not an accident. You're not a mistake. God didn't mess up when he made you the way that he did. He made you for a purpose and with a plan to show you his goodness towards you. Your heavenly Father is not disappointed in you. No matter what you've said, what you've done, where you've been, or how sinfully you've ever acted, God still calls you his child, and your heavenly Father desperately wants to bring healing, freedom, and wholeness to your life.